For over 2 decades, Crash Team Racing time trialers have competed over 2 main categories, course and lap. Of all the laps, the most intimidating has always been that of Hot Air Skyway. This track is the home turf of this game's second to final boss. The track is long, full of tight turns, and has almost no guardrails, making it infamously difficult. A decent player can finish a lap in little under a minute. The top players can cut this to less than a half, using shortcuts. In this video, we will go back in time to discover how Hot Air Skyway was sculpted into a piece of art. As you drive through the track, the first opportunities to save time are found in the lack of walls, allowing you to cut corners. The 3 following techniques are also important to understand. The U-turn can be used to quickly turn 180 degrees at the expense of your turbo being killed. Froggy can be used to maintain speed after a turbo or a downhill, or to gain speed when going up a hill. And Safi, which is short for Sans aucune flamme pour infini, or in English, infinite fire without any flame, can be used to remove the need for power sliding by overflowing the turbo to negatives, granting infinite boost. The early years were dominated by the French players, notably a player nicknamed Arsène Lupin, who is seen as the founder of competitive CTR. By 2001, he had achieved a 4580, likely without the use of any of the advanced techniques I mentioned earlier. He did use 2 notable tricks, the ultimate sacred fire and the wall shortcut. Firstly, ultimate sacred fire, or USF, is done by avoiding gaining any turbo after touching a super turbo pad. It is the maximum speed achievable in the game. The wall shortcut is a schoolyard classic. It is done by turning around in the section with 2 stretches of road separated by a low fence, and then jumping over it. Combined, these 2 save over 10 seconds. Later, players like Cyangin and Kang would challenge Arsène, bringing the record down all the way to Kang's 39:34. At this stage, a froggy U-turn was likely implemented for the wall shortcut, and the hairpin shortcut in the final turn was likely being used, saving another second. There was another shortcut that had already been found, but it was not deemed useful. In this shortcut, instead of jumping over the wall, you clipped under the track to skip the massive turn, skipping about half as much. However, the benefit of this shortcut was that if done right, it did not kill USF. There was a theory that it might be possible to jump all the way to the finish line from the final ramp, if you could keep USF and jump perfectly. But this seemed barely out of reach. There was another player from the tiny city-state of Monaco, J007, who was not quite as skilled as Arsène Kang or Cyangin, but who nonetheless understood the techniques of the game. In autumn 2003, he decided to try his luck using the shortcut for a potential world record. While we do not know how much time he spent trying, we can only assume he must have been overjoyed when he finally succeeded, the first ever mega shortcut. J007's time of 34:44 was soon beaten by Kang and Arsène, the latter of whom set a time of 33:01, which would remain the world record for years. This strategy ended up being the fastest way to finish a lap for a long time, and was quite tricky. Most players have trouble achieving enough reserves to even attempt it, let alone finishing the lap with both shortcuts. Arsene and Kang deemed the 33-second barrier to be the final human limit in 2005, marking it as the god standard. Not too long after, Arsene himself ended up being the first to defeat this barrier. Over the next few years, players like Crash Team Faking, the TJK, and Amarati Kondo would take turns lowering the record, and by the end of 2007, Amarati Kondo had taken it all the way down to 32:31. The next second barrier was getting closer thanks to the usage of a new speed ghost you can gain at the end of the spiral before the Super Turbo Pad. While tight, the sub 32 seemed to be a bit more realistic thing at this stage. Perhaps it would happen one day, but this would surely be the last second barrier. In many speedruns, there have been situations where a complete outsider revolutionizes a category. CTR is not an exception. Top speedrunners may be great at optimizing minor details of their runs, but sometimes they ignore major new tricks right in front of their noses. Sometimes a new shortcut lays there dormant on a YouTube video that nobody has bothered to watch. In late 2008 through early 2009, the Finnish juggernaut of CTR, Black Team Freezing, also known as BTF, was at the peak of his game. One day, BTF stumbled upon a video on YouTube by a fellow Finn, Cortex Shock. This video displayed a shortcut that had never been discovered by a time trialer before. The shortcut involved jumping left outside the spiral to skip one full rotation around it. On Cortex Shock's video, he touches the wall on the outside and loses his boost. But if this could be avoided, the shortcut would offer up to a potential 3 seconds time save. BTF began working on the shortcut and quickly found it is more difficult than any other shortcut he had ever tried before. However, after some time, he pulled the shortcut off, and not only that. He then took the drop-down shortcut a bit wide, but nonetheless made it. He had a few ugly inputs on the big turn, but nothing too bad. And finally, he closed the mega shortcut just barely, touching the track and immediately falling off. This time of 30:49 remained untouched for over a year until it was finally beaten by the legendary French player Crash68 in January 2010. A bit over a year later, the Japanese player Blow Circuit began his campaign to get the lap world record. His goal was to break the 30-second barrier. He had a new technique that he was trying to perfect to do this. But not to be outdone, Crash68 also began grinding. Somehow, he managed to do the impossible and break the barrier of 30 seconds without Blow Circuit's new technique. His new record of 29:93 only lasted for a week though, as Blow Circuit's new technique zoomed him into rank 1 with an incredible 29:78. This was a time deemed almost unbeatable, but at the end of Blow Circuit's video, there was a message about something that was lurking in the shadows of hot Air Skyway. Kart races all feature some form of a turbo pad. They all function differently, but you would be hard-pressed to find a situation where you would want to avoid one. Yet, since USF will turn back into a regular sacred fire if you touch one, that is exactly what CTR players need to do to maintain USF through different parts of the track. Blow Circuit's technique allows you to cut over a turbo pad without touching it. And while it looks easy, it is deceptively difficult. But many turbo pads are too big to go around or to jump over. Turns out, most ramps are like this. A long-time dream of CTR players was to somehow start the lap on Hot Air Skyway while already having USF. But there are two major obstacles: this ramp and the hairpin turn that follows it. The ramp turbo pad is way too big to go over or to go around. And even if you could somehow do it, the hang time would certainly result in a turbo down at the landing area. Just for fun with the STP cheat, this was possible. But another insurmountable obstacle lies ahead. The final turn. This is one of the tightest turns in the game, reminiscent of the Monaco hairpin in Formula 1. The idea of passing this turn with USF sounded ridiculous. Nonetheless, in 2011, Justin Zimmermann, aka Crash Team Alfing, discovered that while you cannot go over, under, or around the preceding ramp, it is possible to go through it. This was done by spinning out. Spin out is a punishment in many kart games for when you drift for too long. For some weird reason, in CTR, spin out does not actually cancel your turbo, it merely pauses it. This also meant that it cancels any turbos gained afterwards. Once you stop spinning out, your turbo resumes as if nothing had happened. In the NTSC versions of the game, the spin out was barely quick enough to be performed right before the turbo pad. Justin theorized that it maybe could be possible to jump the mega shortcut with this new trick, as for some reason it also cancelled any following hang time turbos. But nothing of the sort was ever discovered to be possible. In 2005, Thomas 60 had discovered that when cancelling a drift, your car will adjust to its direction and turn slightly extra, which became a new key mechanic in advanced CTR play. Using the knowledge of this and the spin-out technique, a mysterious figure under the nickname AJB suspected it would be possible to just barely pass the hairpin. He used an emulator and thus had the advantage of being able to use save states. And on summer 2013, AJB made a major breakthrough and proved that it was possible to make the hairpin with USF. AJB used the same route as the current world record in his first video with the USF start. After seeing the video, some commenters from the CTR time trials community told AJB that he should try to use a shortcut that had been found a few years earlier. AJB went back to work and would release this lap. With the USF start, the track was blown wide open. Suddenly, it would be possible to cut the entire first turn and to jump over the wall before the spiral and to skip the entire spiral on top of the massive speed advantage. Thomas 60 was quickly able to recognize that the poster of the video was none other than Crash Team Faking, a former CTR champion who at one point held this very world record too. But it was clear that he was not going to perform this. There was an uneasy anticipation now. Who, if anyone, would be the one to do it? Well, I will let the man tell the story himself.
Yeah, I remember everything. I did almost 50 hours of training, and after the first 12 hours, maybe at the end of the first day or the start of the second one, I did for the first time I reached the starting line. Then I started to reach the starting line every 4 or 6 hours. And it was at the end of the third day, so I was like 14 hours a day for try that fucking lap. And at the end of third, it's around 46, 48 hours. I managed to do the lap. And I was like so happy about it. I was like, oh my god, I did it. No one can do this. I'm insane. And then magically everyone started to do it. But after you do it once, you do it 2 times, you start to realize there is a technique. The hard part is actually reach the starting line. And the hard part as well is to try the lap, you know, because you don't have many attempts to try the jump before the USF turbo, right? Because after it's normal lap. So if you train it, you start to it normally.
Luca was certain this record would stay unbeaten for a long time, as he felt nobody had the skill required to pull it off. But behind everyone's backs, Justin Zimmermann had been hoarding on a massive amount of times that would land him as #1 overall. Included in the hoard was a 29:70 lap on hot Air Skyway that had now been beaten by Luca. But Justin already knew he would have to defend his time with the new AJB tech coming around, and after 3 days of attempts over 2 weeks before Luca ever did the lap, Justin achieved a 27:41 using the USF start but without the spiral cut, using BTF shortcut instead. AJB had now improved his route with the spiral shortcut, and after Luca had confirmed it to be doable for humans, Justin knew that a 23-second lap was possible. So, 13 days after Luca achieved his lap, Justin posted all his hoards, including this lap. On this day, he also posted a massive unhoard of his records, which led him to becoming the rank 1 player overall. For the first time in 5 years, somebody other than Luca 103 or Crash 68 was the champion. Before I continue any further, I must explain the hairpin a bit more. To do one attempt at it, you must do 3 things. 1. You must reach Sapphire, which takes about a minute. 2. You must get USF here after getting Sapphire. 3. You must keep USF until the hairpin. Doing safe but efficient attempts will get you to the hairpin at about 1 minute 45 seconds. Adding in restarts and any other potential losses, you will average about 30 attempts per hour or less. Assume that from now on, every world record was done by players getting 5 or less attempts past the hairpin per hour. The technique Blow Circuit had perfected 2 years prior was not used in conjunction with this route yet. It would take the Japanese Hot Air Skyway master himself to do that, yet again shattering the world record 2 months later with a 23:20. This seemed like the end. The best player of the track doing his best strategies for a short lap like this. How can it be improved? Well, he loses a tiny bit of time in the first cut, followed by having a wide spiral cut and the following bad landing. He has near perfect ending, but loses another tiny bit by not taking the end as tightly as possible. These adjustments come up to about a half a second of time loss. In a lap, you can only try a few times per hour at best. In 2014, Crash 68 decided to give it a go. And more than just the world record, he wanted the sub. sub 23 seconds. To compete with the world record now, you absolutely needed every single possible advantage. On Christmas Eve 2014, Crash 68 beat Blow Circuit's time by a few frames, but the sub eluded him still. This led him to come back a few months later, finally bringing the lap to an astounding 22 seconds.
Yes! Oh merde! Ah, je suis un monstre.
Over 10 seconds below what was once thought as the final barrier. To this day, Crash 68's time of 22:93 is near the top of the leaderboard. It took almost 5 years, but finally in February 2019, the Italian player FG Turismo defeated Crash 68's lap by a mere frame, bringing it down to 22:89. This run is so optimized that hardly anyone can challenge it with driving alone. But as luck would have it, it was discovered the same year that on NTSC-U version you could jump over the finish line at the start to save up to 4 frames. The Peruvian veteran David has slowly inched closer and closer to the top of the lap leaderboard over the past 2 years, and saw this as an opportunity to finally snatch the world record for himself. Soon he became the third person to sub the 23-second barrier with a 22:95, but received criticism for pausing the game mid-run to practice the last shortcut on an emulator. The outrage perhaps made him even more motivated to get the world record, and this time to redeem himself, no pauses. In August that same year, David pulled off another frame's worth of time save, bringing the world record down to 22:86, and this is where the world record stands today. Or at least it would have stood when I started making this video. I began working on this video in November 2021, and as a part of it, I wanted to learn the track to truly understand what was going on at the top level. Red Hot was impressed by the rate at which I was passing the hairpin and told me to practice on emulator, to not waste all the attempts that I was getting. Quickly, I realized that the world record was within my reach if I only had NTSC-U. I had also discovered a small technique that would save a little bit of time before the first cut by avoiding an unnecessary jump. Now anyone attempting the world record would have an advantage over it. I explained the situation to the English player Natty. Natty quickly began taking advantage of Red Hot's new mod that allowed you to use save states on console for practice. He quickly improved to a level where a world record was very realistic. As Natty had NTSC-U, it seemed inevitable that the world record would be quickly beaten, so the grind began. Shortly after, the Italian player Maraengi also began grinding. Maraengi quickly achieved a 22:93 thanks to his efficient practice and daring techniques. His biggest advantage was at the end of the track where he took a risky cut, saving a tiny bit. Soon after, he picked up a 22:88, landing him second on the leaderboard. David, feeling his only world record being threatened, also began playing again, and now there was a race for world record. Surely, the record would go down. But by whom? Well, let's watch it first. world record had an incredible start, a decent blows tech, and a superb ending. While Maraengi was happy, the new record only saved 0.02 of a second over the previous world record. Maraengi knew that this would only last a little time and predicted that within a week it would be beaten. Maraengi's prediction would turn out to be more than correct. There was one more player who had gained access to NTSCU during this time. To do so, he had to learn how to hack a PAL console to run NTSCU games. Just 28 hours after Maraengi's run, yours truly would achieve this run.
Okay, attempt.
Yes! 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 Yes!
I said
2276!
my god! Oh my god! I saw it.
Oh.
It was amazing. What a great blow you had there.
Oh my god!
My first world record ever in CTR time trials. I could not believe it. 2276. 0.08 seconds saved. While I knew I could do it, almost everyone in the community, including myself, expected Maraengi to take this lap to the next level by himself. But there it was. Maraengi and I were neck and neck throughout most of the lap. But the blow circuits technique that I did was potentially the best ever done in a world record run. While this world record is strong, we know from practice attempts that a 2260 something is possible. Maraengi is still going for this, and you never know who else might join the competition. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. This was a passion project for the CTR community, but I especially thank those of you who are not from our community. CTR time trials is a bit like the Galapagos Islands of speedrunning, and I might make a video about that in the future. But for now, goodbye.